Hello, folks. How's it going? Long time no see. Uh, but we did Cloud Week last time, and I'm back today with another stream in Open Source Week, which I'm very excited about. Like, if you know all my previous streams, the code has been kind of available in a way, right? Which basically means that I am a very big advocate of open source. So that's what we are going to do today. We are going to contribute to a open source project that I have created. Okay, so there's a project that I have created. I have tried to add the required defaults. I think I forgot to register though. I should do that to Hacktoberfest, and this project would be part of Hacktoberfest in a way. uh, so yeah, with that, welcome. We'll wait for folks to join. Meanwhile, anyone who has joined right now, hello. And there's a question already. Will there be open source contribution session? I am confused about the question, but we will contribute to open source project that we are building actually. Okay. So we are building our own open source project and we are going to contribute to that open source project. So today and tomorrow, I have like uh, I guess 3 sessions. Yeah, I have 3 sessions. And in the first session, which is today, right now, we are going to start building some bits and pieces of it. And then the next session would basically be continuing on that. Then the third session, by the end of third session, we'll have a kind of a usable project. But then uh, I'll open more issues on GitHub, which you can individually pick and contribute towards. And that's how we'll do it. Uh, okay. So, hi and hello, everyone who's on chat. I'm beginning from absolute scratch. Would it be fine to follow this? Yes, actually, yes, it would be because we are kind of going to, build it from scratch on our own. So we will put all the issues and stuff in like from scratch. We'll put our own issues, we'll contribute to our own issues for the time being, at least for like today, tomorrow. uh, it will be just me contributing to this repository, but once you get a hang of it, you can contribute from your end as well. uh, Next question. Most of the issues are already assigned for Hacktoberfest and I couldn't find one to work on. So, well, we will create our own issues and they will be assigned to one of you folks tomorrow. Okay, not today. Like, let me be very clear here. Like, please understand that I want to build the basic structure of it so that I can show you what is the structure that I would prefer your contributions to be like. So tomorrow we will create more issues and we'll assign those issues. Right now I have created just one. As we go along this session, we'll create more and more. Okay. Can you put the link of this repo in the chat? It will be there. Don't worry. I'm just waiting for folks to join for the time being. Just like, take a fresh breath and then from there we'll start. Okay. Uh, so that I can give you a better overview of what it is. Like, I'll give you this repo link and you'll start contributing, and well, that's not going to exactly help, right? So we need to set up the base and then we'll go from there. Uh, okay, any more questions? Hi, it's okay if you don't know anything. That is definitely cool. Uh, Can you recap? Just joined. I just started. Don't worry. All I'm saying is we are building our own project of color palette generator. I could show you what is the inspiration for this. Okay, let me just quickly open it. Okay, so this website is the inspiration for what we are going to build. Okay, so this website is to generate your color palette. Let's say you give it a hex color. I am not sure, so I'm going to give it some. Okay, still somewhere here. Okay, let's go like this. Okay, so I want this to my base color. Okay, this is kind of my primary color. So as you can see, it creates this grid of colors where this particular color is somewhere there in the grid, and it creates some lighter shades from there and some darker shades from there. Okay, so this is kind of the inspiration for the project that we are going to build in color palette generator. Why we are, I wouldn't say clone, but in a way, let's say clone of this. Why are we building a clone of this? Because it has some paid features. Like if I want to generate contrast grid for two colors at the same time, I'll have to pay for it. Similarly, for accessibility, uh, like colors have a rating on that, that how accessible is this on a background, right? So let's say this one. So there's a background and then there's this text, and you can see the accessibility contrast uh, says that it is 4.72 with a green check mark. Okay, this one has a contrast of 2.04 with exclamation mark, which basically means that this is not really accessible. Okay, it's not good if you use this combination on your website. So to generate that contrast grid and check the accessibility rating, I keep saying accessibility, but I think I'm pronouncing it wrong every time. Uh, you'll have to again pay for it. So, I mean, there's no harm in paying for it, but I was like, this could be a very good open source project to build where we kind of take this as a base and then build the additional features as required. So that is the basis of the project. That is what we are going to do. Uh, yes, we'll have enough issues. Don't worry. How many hours is this class? So this one is for 2 hours, no breaks in between. 2 hours continuously. We are going to work on it, and then from that, uh, tomorrow I'll have 4 hour session with a 1 hour break in between. So total of 6 hours. Uh, you will fork the repository that I have, but you won't do it just yet. Okay, you won't do it just yet. Wait for it. That was kind of the reason why I was not sharing the GitHub link yet. Uh, the tool that I use, realtimecolors.com, I have not seen it, but I can check it out. Realtimecolors.com. Nice. And it's free. How many colors? Normally three. Mhm. This is cool. This is really nice. So let's say we are building something very similar to this from our side. Okay. Yep. If we somehow miss this live session, will it get recorded? Yes, it is always recorded. All MLH sessions are recorded. They are available on the YouTube channel of Major League Hacking. So definitely you can, you know, see the recording from there. You can see all the past recordings from there. And I can quickly share the link to that. Okay. There you go. That is the YouTube channel of Major League Hacking, and you can find all the previous streams and stuff, all the live sessions that have happened in this open source week as well as in the past. Okay, so what's next? First project finally. I love the excitement here. Definitely love the excitement. Swag give away? No, not from me, unfortunately. Okay, so I think that has been a very good enough introduction to what we are going to build. And next step would be let's start building. So what have I done till now? And someone already shared the GitHub link. Thank you so much. And now we can officially share it in a way. So there you go again, the GitHub link to my repository. And I like created it half an hour ago or something. So there's not much to this. We'll create the whole thing from scratch. We'll start building. But what I have till now, I basically have a very simple wheat uh, scaffolding. You could say that, right? So what is wheat scaffolding? It is basically we are going to use wheat to build our project, which is going to be uh, what do you say, build tool. Yeah, I was thinking of the name. What would you call it? Build tool. Yeah, so we'll use the wheat build tool, which has some templates that are already there, existing templates. And I use the one of the template, the React template, to build my initial project. If you want to do it on local, uh, which I have already done, you could do something like this. Okay. You could do npm create wheat at latest, the name of the repository, let's say. So that in this case would be color palette generator dash 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 template, and the template here instead of view it would be React. Okay. So that is kind of what I did, and that's how we ended up here in our local project. And I've pushed this out on GitHub for the time being. Okay, very simple. There are issues that we are going to create as we go along. The first issue that I have created is going to be this one: the clean, uh, the default weed generated workspace and set up Tailwind CSS. Okay, that's the basic simple thing. And already I have someone asking it to from me. I don't want to do that right now. We will do that in the third session. Please understand. For the time being, we'll try and set it up from our own end. Okay. I will try and show it to you. Kind of like you can think of it as a webinar. Okay. So from a webinar's perspective, you're watching someone do some live coding and just understanding what their thought process is. How do you build XYZ stuff? And then we'll assign the issues later. Also, I haven't registered on Hacktoberfest with this repository, so I also need to do that. Mm, I remember there was something about register for Hacktoberfest. Yep. Okay. There is a lot of questions. I'm trying to register to Hacktoberfest right now, and there is a lot of things. So let me just quickly uh, add this stuff. Uh, okay. Okay. Finally, I have registered on Hacktoberfest. So if you haven't already, please do, so that it is simple. And the process, it was simple. It was just showing my email address and stuff. That is why I did not do it on screen. All you need to do is click on the register button of Hacktoberfest, and from there it will ask you to connect your GitHub and or GitLab, whichever you would like. In my case, GitHub, of course, and if you want to contribute to this project, GitHub, of course. Uh, yeah, connect your GitHub. It asks you for your name, email, which kind of is already populated. Some other questions: how familiar are you with coding, and do you want marketing emails, stuff like that, and then click on register. That's it. And the registration link is on the homepage itself, so don't have to worry about it. Okay, cool. So let's start building. Let's start doing one thing at a time. So number one would be this one. Also, I realized I should number the issues. So I will go like, this is my first issue, one dash something, clean up default workspaces. Okay, cool. So I've added this, just a one dash something. Uh, this issue, I will assign it to myself. Okay, so that's also done. Next, let's move on to the next bit. I already have all the code that's needed here. So we can just simply move on to resolving that PR, that issue, resolving that issue. Okay. So let me run this project first. So when you build a Vite project, it kind of starts very like, it looks similar to this, exactly like this. Uh, it installs some dependencies, which you can think of as some libraries that's installed, some dev dependencies, okay, that's installed by default, and that's basically it. And all I've done is I have started this particular script of dev Vite. Okay, I think this should be zoomed in enough. Also, let me get out of your hair so you can focus on the screen. Okay, so it is currently running on the local host 5173, and this is what it looks like. We need to clean it from here. Okay, we'll start the cleanup process from here. And to clean it up, what we need to do is remove anything and everything that is not required, and at the same time add Tailwind CSS in our project. So let me go over stuff one by one. Public folder has a vite.svg, which acts here as your fav icon here. Don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to delete it. Then, so our public folder is now empty. The assets folder has this React icon. Don't want that for now. So I'm going to remove that as well. Now it has broken something. It has broken app.jsx. Okay, because it's searching for Vite logo, it's searching for React logo, and both of them are not available. So actually, I would delete all of this. So I would delete all the imports there except for the CSS import. Also going to delete a bunch of stuff from this app so that it's a clean start project. And I'm going to add a simple h1 tag saying GHW open source week color palette generator. Okay, so very simple h1 tag that goes right there. Then next step would be app.css. Don't need the styling that exists, so removing that. Index.css not really needed, so I'm going to delete that as well. Main.jsx, it imports index.css, but we have deleted that, so not needed. That goes away, and this is what we are left with. uh, what about our git ignore? Is everything all right? Okay, it's going to ignore the log files, the node modules. That's good. VS code, idea folder, ds store. Okay, cool. So nothing to change there. What about ESLint, let's say? So it ESLint is for linting. Okay. So if I have to explain ESLint, you can think of it as a analyzer of your code, right? So as you could see in the description or in the website, on their website, they tell you what it is. So it analyzes your code, quickly finds problems. Example, it will see, if I reload this, hopefully it will show it again. So prob lmes, and then it says you have declared this variable but you're not reading that value. So it quickly tells you about any issues. So, and you have to configure it, you have to set it up. And with Wheat, the best part is with the preview templates is that it kind of already comes set up in a way. So I'm happy with this. I'm not going to change it for now. There's an index.html, which is the entry point to our app. There is a title of Wheat plus React. If you go here, GHW open source weak color palette generator, that is good. It's called Wheat plus React. We should change the title. I'm going to call it GHW color palette generator. Uh, okay. So wait, did I forget a W? Yeah. Okay, GHW color palette generator. That's the title that we are going to go with. Perfect. What would be the next step? License. Okay, this is something that I generated when I was creating the repository. You don't have to care about it. Uh, Package lock not touching. Package JSON. I did change one thing here. That was if you install a fresh repository, not install, when you create a fresh template, everything comes with this caret symbol. Okay, this up arrow kind of thingy, you can say. uh, the caret symbol, and what it suggests is that in this library the React version is 18.3.1 with a caret. So whenever React releases the version 18.4, it will update it automatically, and the updated versions will be saved in package lock. Now, ideally, you don't want that. Okay. Why? Because the whole idea of a project is that it should be easily reproducible. So if you think that, oh, my React version installed is 18.3.1 and there's a caret symbol and you have run the whole checks, it will install maybe a version above 18.3.1. It would install 18.3.2 probably. It would install 18.4.1. And I don't want that. I like it's not really good practice from a point of view where you want to reproduce your project as it is, exactly as is. So that is why the first step that I do is always remove the caret symbol. Okay. Also, we could make it a habit to install the library versions without caret. The way to do it is to add a .npm-rc file. So that is what we are going to do. .npm-rc file, and in that I will say that save dash exact equals to true. So what does this mean? I'll show it to you actually in two steps. For the time being, let's say I don't have this, and let's install Tailwind CSS. Any other cleanup that we need to do? We do need to clean up the README, which I'll do in a bit, and this is fine. Don't need any plugins as such. Okay, so let's say we want to install Tailwind CSS. Okay, so to install Tailwind CSS, we could go through the framework guides that they suggest, that they give. And in that, we want to use Wheat framework. So let me share this particular link with you all. Oh, there's a question. Oh, suggestion more like, can you add PR template so we can share ideas in the repo? I will do that uh, tomorrow. Okay, so I've shared this link, which is how to install Tailwind CSS in a Wheat project. Now, we are using React, so this is fine. Creating your project, the project is already created, so this is not a problem. Installing Tailwind CSS, let's go from here. So npm install dash d Tailwind CSS. So we don't have Tailwind CSS in our dev dependencies. The dash d means it's going to be in the dev dependencies. So let me quickly install it. I'm going to exactly paste what they have given and install. And that installs these three things: auto prefixer, uh, post CSS, Tailwind CSS, all with a caret symbol. So tomorrow, like currently it's the latest version, of course. Okay. But tomorrow, if they update the version and I run a reinstall on the project, it will update the dependency, but it will not tell me. It will not update the numbers here. It will not go like, oh, it's 3.4.14. It will go like, yeah, it's 3.4.13. But internally, it would be 3.4.14. I don't like that. So what are we going to do? For the timing, I'm going to delete this. Okay. I'm going to delete that. Also, I have a habit of running a clean install script, which basically means that I don't want to manually delete stuff. So I will do that. I'll show it to you how this is like a nice way of doing stuff. So a clean install script, what should it do? On machines of, like, let's say Linux machines, Mac OS, this script will work. You are going to say that rm-rf, which means that remove and recursively, forcefully, some folders like node modules should be deleted, the dist folder should be deleted, and once this deletion is done, then it needs to do npm install. Okay. For Windows, if you want a similar command, I think this would work. So npm colon install colon Windows, let's say. Rmdir, I think that's what you would need to do. /s/q, and then exactly these things. Okay, so this is the command to run on Windows. This is the command to run on any other OS. So now what we will do is let's run this command. So npm run clean colon install. Okay. So as you can see, it does some deletion. The node modules folder would be deleted and it's back again. Also, I should have deleted the package lock so that we are starting fresh. Okay, so it has installed the package JSON at its current instance, right? So now the next step would be to actually add the save exact. So I'm going to do save dash exact equals to true. Okay, so save exact true. It is going to ensure that all the dependencies are in, any dependency that we install in future would always be installed uh, without the caret. Okay, so now I'm going to rerun this command that we had, the npm install dash d tailwind css post css auto prefixer, hitting enter on that. It installed the libraries without the caret symbol. Okay, which basically ensures that in future, if any library updates, it wouldn't update for you. You have to manually do it, and that is good because then you can check what needs to be updated, what doesn't need to be updated. uh, yeah. So any questions? Let me see in the chat. First time hearing about clean commands. Can you explain again? Okay, so clean command is more like a personal command, okay? Yeah, as in like it's a custom command and you can specify anything you want. You can add scripts here which do stuff, right? So all the, like, of all the projects that I build, I like to add a clean install command, which deletes the node modules folder. It deletes the dist folder, which you will see later what is a dist folder, and then it runs the npm install command. So npm install installs all the dependencies, creates or updates this package lock JSON. It installs node modules. Okay. Before we delete, so we first delete it and then we install it. So you can think of it as a mini automation that we are doing here. Instead of deleting a node modules folder manually by going like right click, delete, and deleting package log manually or any other folders manually, and then typing like npm install, I am going to type like one command, which is clean install, and that takes care of it for me. Pair AI, I have no even no idea about it actually. Mhm. No ideas about it. Sorry. Okay, so that's us installing Tailwind. That's us installing Tailwind, adding the clean command. Let's see the next steps. The next step in Tailwind CSS is to actually do this init command. So let me run that. That should create a new file, and there we go. Creates two new files. There's a postcss.config.js and tailwind.config.js. Okay. Next step would be add the paths to all your template files in tailwind.config.js. So in this file, we need to update the content, which is an empty array right now, and update it with this. So let me copy that and add that right here. Okay. Then next step is add the tailwind directives to your CSS file. And it says that add it to index.css. We deleted index.css. So I'm going to add it to the next best CSS file that we have, which is app.css. Okay. And then you have to do npm run dev. Also start using Tailwind in your project. So let me just stop this, clear this, uh, make this a bit smaller, clear this as well. And we can do npm run dev. Okay, so if we go to our project, which I think is overridden. Yep. Okay, GHW open source week color palette generator. Perfect. So that is Tailwind installed. It does give us a warning saying that no utility classes were detected, which means that we are not using Tailwind as such. So let's use it very quickly. In our app.jsx, we have this h1. So we can add Tailwind, which is, you can think of it as another way of writing CSS. Okay. So let's say I want the font to be bold for this. So you could do something like class name, and inside that class name, you can go like font dash bold. Okay. And what that means is it would set the font weight to be 700. So let's go here, and you can see the font is now bold. I want to add a underline to my text. You can just do like underline, which is a shorthand property. You can think of it as like, instead of in CSS writing text decoration underline, you can do it shorthand way of writing like underline, and you can find that it works, right? I want this to be centered. I can do like text dash center, and that should kind of center it. Okay, it's now centered to the page. I want to add some margin on the top, and so I can do like margin top, so empty. And let's say we have so many options. I want margin top to be like 52. Okay, so it should push it down by 52. No, it pushes it down by 208 pixels. Okay, So that is the shorthand way of writing CSS using Tailwind CSS. Just something very cool, I would say. Uh, okay, some discussions about pair AI editor and cursor. Uh, okay. Oh, it's all about code editor using AI. I mean, you can always go for uh, Copilot, right? That's also a good option, I feel. Okay, it knows your code base. Nice, cool. I may try it over the weekend. Hmm. Yeah. Okay, anyways, going back to our project for the time being, let's move on. So we have added some tailwind. We have added tailwind. We have added some configuration. Anything else? So we have cleaned up our repo. We have added tailwind to it. And that's it. So that's our first contribution done. So let me quickly stop this, clear this up, and you can see that I can actually try it. So the current branch that I'm in is main branch, but if I want to go through the whole process of PR and approvals and stuff, I should create a new branch and push my code from a new branch, right? So let's do that. So wait, what is the shorthand for creating a new branch? Oh, you could do git checkout. Yeah, git checkout dash B, which is a new branch. And I am going to name my branch as one dash feet cleanup default workspace. Okay, no spaces, of course. So I'm going to remove that. Okay, so git checkout dash B, one dash feet dash cleanup default workspace. So now we have switched over to a new branch. So now if I do a new branch, this is my current branch. Perfect. So let's check the git status. What have we done till now? We modified a few files, deleted the SVG, deleted the react.svg, deleted index.css, created new files of .npmrc and post.css config and tailwind css config. Cool. So let's add all of these changes. I'm happy with all of these changes. Uh, Also, if I go over to our running this, okay, I am not happy with one thing, which we can kind of fix later, right? Which is this whole thing kind of centered around. So for now, I'm going to do git add all. Okay, so add everything. Now, if I do a git status, it's all green and it says that changes to be committed. So let's add that commit. So we did git add. Now the next step would be git commit and dash m. And I'm going to name the commit as feature. Okay, it's a feature commit. And what is the next step? What we did, clean up repo, add tailwind css. That's what we did in this commit, right? And there we hit enter. And the next step would be to git push. Okay, and where do we want to push it? We want to push it on this particular branch that we have created. And now normally you could do git push, but I have, like, personally I have this habit of getting not getting pushing. What is getting? Okay, so pushing to the branch. with like origin. So you could do git push origin and the branch name, and you hit enter. So it pushes that, and then it gives you this thing. It says that create a pull request for this by visiting this particular link that they have generated. So I could go to this particular link, and that will show me a pull request. So let's go to this particular link, and there it is. uh, Perfect. So it shows like whatever I name the commit as the title, and says that it is able to merge, no merge conflicts, and shows me the bunch of changes that I have done. I'm going to sneeze. Give me a second. Sorry. Okay. Thank God you didn't have to hear that. Uh, okay. So that I think should be good enough. And what else? Can we do anything else? Uh, Nothing as such. I can assign the label to it, not really needed. Reviewers, I am the only person who is contributing right now and reviewing it. But later on, when you have to contribute, you can kind of uh, put it on my name. And then in the description, what you could do is you could take the link to the issue and add it in the description. Okay, that's easy find. So resolves issue and the link to the issue, right? And I can click on the pull request. Okay, and then it runs some check, and it says this branch has no conflicts with the base branch, which is the main branch, and I can merge the pull request. So let's click on merge this pull request. This is the commit that's going to be, and confirm merge, and that's it. That is done, right? So now if I go to our code, we successfully merged this pull request, and we have post configs JS, tailwind config JS, and everything. Now if I go to our issue, you can see that okay, this is kind of in a way done and merged. So now I can close this issue, right, with a comment of resolved, and close with comment, and done. This issue has been now marked closed. Perfect. So that is one good way of the issues, the pull requests, added, deleted. We have a branch here which has already been merged. So I would prefer to delete it. Okay, perfect. So once your code has been merged, I would delete it. Okay. And I think that should be it actually. Okay, yeah, that's done. That is kind of the easiest thing that we had to do. What next? Let us create the next bits, right? Let's create a bunch of issues. So if we look at our UI colors app, okay, what do we need? We need initially, like from the features perspective, we first need a input box. Okay, now the input box, it needs to cater to three different kind of colors. One would be a hex color, which is what you see right now. There's also the HSL color, okay, which is your hue, saturation, and lightness, how light or dark it needs to be. Okay, uh, and there's also the option of RGB colors, right? So let's say uh, I'm pretty sure I knew about a website for that, which I could show you. Oh, found it. There we go. So RGB color picker. I'm not going to entertain the A for now. Uh, yeah, let's say only RGB, where you have how much red, how much green, and how much blue. Okay. So we need three different types of inputs. The user should add or should be able to add three different types of inputs. One would be the normal hex code, one would be the HSL code, and the third would be a RGB, right? So let's do that. Let's create an issue first. Uh, we can call it color input picker or color input. I think color input sounds good, right? So this is 2 dash feet create color input component. Okay, and we have a we can add a checklist here. So let's say I want to add number one. Uh, it should have three different inputs, namely hex, RGB, HSL. Okay, so it should allow a user to kind of see or input three different types of things. Either they can add a hex code, or they can add a RGB code, or they can add a HSL code, right? So yeah, these three things should be good enough. uh what next? Anything else that we need to add to our input box? Actually, I think this should be good enough for now. So labels, I am going to say this is a good first issue, nothing as such. And right now it's going to be assigned to me, and let me submit this issue. So there we go, there's a nice checkbox which we can complete once we have resolved this issue. So let's go over to our code. uh, Step one, along with some like adding the color input, I'll also uh, clean up this. But first, right now we are on a branch, so we should check out to main. Okay, this is our main with all this code, but now we could simply do git pull dash dash all. Okay, and there we go, we are now on the main branch. How exactly the main branch looks like? Also, we can keep our server running in the background. This is what it looks like. This time I'm going to check out to the branch first, so let me do that. I know that there is an open issue, so I will try and create my checkout directly like that. So git checkout dash b and the thing. Also, if I'm not wrong, if I do this, okay, what if I do this? Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, just checking what kind of branch names, because I know that you could do something like copy paste it in here, but maybe without this whole colon and stuff. Probably then it works. Okay, cool. So moving on. So what are we going to do? Now we are on our branch and we want to first do some cleanup. So number one would be don't like this. I'm going to remove this. We should have a main tag. A main tag is kind of like the main thing, and everything else would be divided into different sections, right? So that's our main tag right here. Then once we have the main, uh, we could do some additions to that, right? Number one, we could add some class names to kind of ensure that whatever we build is kind of constricted on the page. Also, you can think of the construction as that would help us in future to ensure that our website is responsive. So number one is MX Auto. I will say that the max width should be 5XL, but on large screen, the max width should be 7XL. Okay. On the X side, so on the X axis, that is our left and right, there should be a padding of 6, not 6 pixels. I wouldn't say 6 pixels. It is like 24 pixels on the left and right. And on the top and bottom, it should be 12. And inside this, I want a h1 tag with the class name of, the text size should be like 4XL. The font could be like medium, and it should be like centered to the div, to the parent, and everything should be uppercase. Even if I type it in lowercase, it should be uppercase. uh, GHW color palette generator. Okay, so now if we go to our project, there we go, everything is uppercase and xyz stuff, whatever we, the changes that we did. Now I don't really like this uppercase, so I'm going to remove this. And yeah, this looks much better to me, frankly. Okay, so GHW color palette generator, and it is responsive in a bit. And the way I can show it to you is I can add a background of, let's say, yellow 200. Okay, so when it's on a full screen, it is taking this max width of 7XL. Okay, there will be some padding here and there, but as it goes on a smaller screen, it's going to take max 5XL. I can reduce it to, let's say, take max XL. Okay, but not really needed. Okay, so that's the max width it can take on a smaller screen. Max width of 5XL means it needs to be like 1024 pixels. That is the max width. And here on a larger screen, the max it could go is 1280 pixels. Okay, and yep, that's it. So we have successfully created one bit of it. I'm going to remove the yellow for the time being, but you get an idea what the max width was doing. Okay. Okay, cool. Moving on. What's next? I think we can add a section right now on our code. Okay. So let me add a section here. And inside this section is where we will add our button. Not button, sorry. We will add our input. Okay. The input box that we are going to create. So for this section, let me add some class names. So class name one would be that on all sides, it needs to have a padding of like p-1, which is 4 pixels padding on all sides. It should have a border, and the border width by default is 1 pixel, but I want it to be like 2 pixels. So you could do border dash 2. What about the border color? So I am going to set it to some colors. You can find the list of colors on Tailwind website. So you can search for customizing colors, and these are all the colors that are available in Tailwind by default. Okay, you don't have to do anything for these; they are available inbuilt, you can say. So yeah, I am going to go for the slate and 300. I think should be good, or slate 200 is also fine. So let's say slate 300. I want it to be rounded, and you can find all that actually. So border radius in the borders. So there's rounded MD, LG, and full. Okay, there are one or two more things. There's also rounded none, rounded full. Okay, so I think I'm going to keep it as rounded dash XL. Also, I'm getting these suggestions thanks to one of the plugins that I have. I have a lot of them, but there is, I'm pretty sure, a Tailwind CSS official plugin by Tailwind Labs. Okay, so you could use this plugin to add those hints that I am getting. So rounded Excel, this sounds about right. And inside this, let me add some text, color, choose your input actually, or input your color, input color. I think this should be good. Let's see. So there we go. Rounded Excel added adds that. Uh, there's a, you can see the color there. I don't like that it's touching the top, like the bottom of our headline, the H1. So I am going to add a margin top of, like, let's say, let's start with 5. Okay, it pushes it down by this much, which is cool actually. I think I'm happy with that. Uh, or you could increase it to like 10, and that's not much of a difference, but I think this looks better in a way. Okay, so now we have added our first section. Now what's the next thing that we need to do? We need to add a color input, like input a color. It's kind of a title. Now we can make this title a bit better looking, so I can add a font and stuff. uh, for the timing, I'm just going to do underline. Okay, and from the, and we can center it actually. Okay, so now below this would be our color input. So color input, let's create the component. Now, if you're new to React, what is a component? It is nothing but your JavaScript code, but you divide your React project into different things. Okay, yeah, into different parts. You, and the general convention, okay, which is easy to understand for others, which is very helpful, is to create pages, components, uh, routes, constants, and bunch of other folders. Okay, so like one of the folders that we had, which I think I deleted, yes, was assets. Okay, so assets holds all your uh, PNGs, SVGs, and anything that is, I don't know, required for the website, which is not JavaScript code. Okay, could be PDF files and stuff like that. Then you have your components. So you can think of components as small building blocks to your project. Okay, and when I say small, I mean you want a component to be as dumb as possible, which may not be the thing in our case. But when I say dumb, I mean that given input data, it should not do calculations inside it, or it should not be very dependent on the data that is given. It should be like, okay, if I'm given X type of data, I will do X type of things. If I'm given Y type of data, I'm going to do Y type of things. It should not be like I need X type of data with Y type of functionality with Z type of structure or something, because that is a bad component. Okay, you don't want logic to be inside your components, or at least you try to avoid it. So that is the first thing to understand, that components are the smaller building blocks. So example, I'll create a color input component, and the color input component will be built up of three different type of inputs. I said, like, as we saw in this one, right? We have a hex input, then there's HSL, and this is switching between, like, this outer input box is switching between those two things, allows you to switch between that. So in our case, what we could do is create a three different input boxes. One could be like for the hex code, one could be for your HSL, one could be for RGB, and then create a parent of that called as color input. Okay. So, and the parent could be like this box that you see, like, this whole input box thing with borders and stuff. That could be our parent, and the children inside it, or the smaller components inside it, could be hex, RGB input, hex input, HSL input. Okay. So yeah, with that in mind, let's start creating a component. There's a question. So should each component relay only one independent functionality? You should try that. Yes, it would be good if it could relay only one single input functionality, one independent functionality. That's not always possible, but you should strive for it. Okay, strive for it. Also, you can use the idea of composition, which is like taking two different components, mixing them together, uh, creating a third component. So individually they are doing something, but you can kind of mix it together and create a third type altogether of component. Okay, so moving on, let's do that. Assets folder, I think I am not going to need it right now, so I'm going to delete it. For the components, let's start with the parent component, which is color input .jsx. JSX, JavaScript extension, I think that's the full form. Uh, the whole idea is that it is JavaScript, but the X adds a bit of a X factor. Joking. Uh, the X denotes that it is going to be a kind of a React component in a way. Now, okay, so let's how do we start this? So let's first create the baseline of the component. So you do x const, then whatever is the name of the file, that is what is going to be the name of your component that is going to be exported from here. It will take some inputs. Oh, actually not right now. Okay, so you can see we have kind of created a function, arrow function. This can do some JavaScript inside it, and also can return a, HTML. Okay, HTML lookalike, which is a JSX actually. So in our case, it should return a div with some class names that I could add. Uh, in our case, we can add just a background color. So background color of BG dash cyan dash 300, at least for the time being. Inside that, we can add a quick p tag saying color input. Okay, nothing fancy going on here. Some very basic to just show you uh, what a component structure should look like. Now I'm going to export this component, and we'll do export default color input. Okay, and now once it has been exported, what does this mean? If it is exported from here, I can import it somewhere. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to do import color input from dot slash components, which is like from this parent. wherever this is in the root of src. From here, go inside one folder, so we can show that. So dot slash would give you inside O components folder. Inside that, color input is what we are interested. As you can notice that we don't really need to add the extension because it's a JSX file and we will understand, oh, it's a JavaScript kind of file. So now below this h1 tag, we can call our component. So we will do color input and forward slash empty. Now if we go to our project, which I should move here. There we go. That's our color input. Okay. That's how it looks right now. I know, very ugly, but we'll fix it. Don't worry. So that's your color input. Now, I said that color input should be made of three different input, right? So what I could do is I could create inputs as a separate folder. And inside this, I will have a hex color input .jsx. You can have HSL color input.jsx, and finally you can have RGB color input.jsx. Okay, so three different inputs. Now I have an extension and I don't remember which one because, as I said, I've installed a lot of them, but one of them actually helps me create, I think it's this one, simple React snippets. Okay, so that lets me create this component the way you saw it by just doing RAFCE, React Arrow Function Export Component. So if I hit enter, magic, right? But I do need to make one change here. So I will add that as a p tag here, and here I will add a class name with a background of yellow 300. Okay, now let's go here. This class name background of red 300, and not really needed here. Then what else? Finally, we can do the last one, not needed. This class name would be green 300. Okay, perfect. So now we have created these three smaller components and we are going to use it in color input. So below this text, I am going to call each one of them. So first would be like hex color input. Second one would be just below that I'm adding. That would be like HSL color input. And third would be RGB color input. Actually, I would like RGB and then HSL, hex RGB HSL. Okay, makes perfect sense, right? And it says where it is importing from. Okay, dot slash inputs and then the file name. Actually, I would want this to be named in a lowercase because the capital one looks weird. So lowercase, and then it asks me, do you want to update all the inputs? Yes, and that's smaller. And this could be a kicker because sometimes between the capital and small, it really does not understand. So you have to reload the whole thing. Okay, now that we have done that, there we go. That is what our color input looks like. Okay, inside that, it is importing your hex color input, RGB color input, and HSL color input. Uh, okay, now ideally, I would want the color input to encompass this instead of adding it like one below the other, right? So we would need to add some CSS for it. So let's start with that. Okay, so I'm going to add a CSS of grid. I'm going to say and to understand what exactly I'm going to do, you can go to Tailwind and grid. I think grids. Oh yeah, this one I think. So to add grids, like let's say this one, they create multiple divs inside 1 to 9, and then they say grid calls 4 and gap 4. So they say that in one column, I need 4 divs to be shown, and then the gap between the first div and the second div would be like this gap 4, right? And then inside the grid, you can create like subgrids and stuff. Uh, you have like how big a column needs to be, how small a column needs to be, and a bunch of other stuff, right? How many rows and stuff. Okay. So we'll take a leaflet out of this. So I'm going to say it's going to be a grid, and I need grid calls one. Why one? Because on a smaller screen, I want it to show one below the other. But on medium screens, so MD colon says that on screens medium and above, I want it to show like two calls. Okay. And on larger screens, I want it to show four columns. Or three, I think. Three should be good. Yeah, three, right? Why four? Because we have three things only. So grid calls three. Now the gap between these things should be like, let's say, four. And yeah, that should kind of do the trick. But once you have done this, let's go and check it out. Okay, perfect. So there we go. There's color input, there's hex color input, RGB color input, and HSL color input. And it is going, the HSL is going to the next one because there is this P tag, right? Which is inside it. That's also like one of the things that you need to take care of. So let's say I make this 4, and there we go. That's how it will look like. There's the text and there are the inputs. Now if I start reducing the size of this, so large screen, then we somehow went like will sometime reach the MD screen, and now it is like two columns: color input, RGB color input, hex color input, and or let me call this as the title. Okay, yeah, three inputs and the title. And then when you go even smaller, it goes to one column, right? So very simply, we have created a responsive design using Tailwind CSS, and the gap 4 is what is the blue that you see here. Okay, so if I remove that, they should be kind of sticking to each other. There we go. So yep, I think that's fine for now. Then what else? We can define the column span. Okay, like how much space should this thing take, we can define that. Right now we are not going to do that. Let's first build our first input, the simplest one, which would be the hex color input. So hex color input, as I said, it would be simplest one, right? So what do we need to do here? Now in this case, we can say that number one, the input should be width full. Okay, 100% width. That was nice. And then we should add a title. So I'm going to use the h3 HTML tag. I'm going to say the text needs to be large and the font to be bold. And what should be this title? It should say hex. Okay. And then below that, all we need to do is add an input box, right? So I'm going to say input. It is going to be of type text. Uh, what would be the value of it? We don't know. So value, let's say we can start with a beginning value of I don't know, hash hash 33 ABFF. Okay, some color there. Then we can add a placeholder text. So we can say hex input. a placeholder. And what else? A class name, right? So what is the what class name do we want? I want it to be bordered. I want the border not to be sharp, but like let's say rounded LG, and I want the width to be full, and there is no child to it, so that's why it's a self-closing input. Okay, now if we go here, this is what it looks like. Input box and something like this, and it does not do anything. It does not change. It does not allow me to type. If I want to type something in it, does not allow me. Okay, let's say I don't have this value. Would it allow me then? Okay, so there's hex input, and now it allows me to do something in it. Okay, nice, cool. uh, it is too squished, so I would want there some height to be there. And also the text that I start typing, let's say I type 4 5, it starts exactly at the border here. Don't like that. So I can say that on the x-axis, like push away. So now you can say that it starts after like this px2, which is 8 pixels from the left of the border. And the height, we need still need to take care of it. So I can go like py. So when I add py, it adds two things. Like in case of px, it adds left and right. But if I only want to add left, I can do pl. So only adds the left. So similarly, top and bottom, I want py or my. So I think 4 should do the trick. That's too much. py1, yeah, this looks like an input box, right? Uh, what about the border? I have added a border, but where is the border color? So we need to add some border color. So I'm going to say border slate 300. Okay, there it is. It is there. Trust me on that. It's just not very visible right now. So what we could do is we can get rid of this PG yellow. Okay. And there's the input box. We could also get rid of the blue that I had added, the cyan. Okay. Let's see. Okay, perfect. This looks good, right? Input box allows me to type in it. Okay, but we need to save this value somehow. So we could do something like a state management, right? So we can do a very simple state management here, where we can say that const hex input and set hex input, and we are going to use a hook that comes installed in React, which is use state. What is the initial value going to be? Oh, why am I doing it here? Let's do it inside the hex color input first. So I don't need it here. Like we will eventually move it here, but let's start from the basics. So use state, need to import this. So it adds import here. Uh, what about the initial color? So you remember the whole value thing. So the value would actually be the hex input. I can add an initial state to this. So I can, if I don't have anything, it would be empty. But I can actually add the initial value of, let's say, hashtag 4512 AB, some color. And that is the initial state. Okay, now you have set the initial state, but once you set that, and I try to, I'm like, trust me on that, that I'm pressing the backspace, the delete, but it's not deleting anything. So I need to add a on change handler. Okay, tell it that anytime this value changes, you need to do something. So I'm going to say that on change. Okay, whatever you type inside would be a event, and I will say that set the hex input to be that event. So event dot target dot value. Okay. So now if I try to hit backspace, it allows me to, and I can type something here, right? Okay, perfect. So now I can do some typing. If I reload the page, actually, like, let me clear it out. Okay. If I clear it out and I add ff, perfect. And if I do a reload, it reverts back to the initial value. So there we go. We have created a very simple state management right here to manage the state. The border, I think border 2 would look good. This that looked very thin. Uh, and this particular text, I can say that on, let's add a padding left of 1. Okay. So that should push the text inside kind of. Or we could also do padding left of 2 actually. So that puts this title exactly in line to this hashtag, right? So that's one thing done. Hex input, and inside which we can type. The next would be RGB and then HSL. So let's figure it out one step at a time. So next would be RGB. Now, in case of RGB, we would have to do a bunch of things. But before we go ahead, I I want the parent component to actually manage the state for me. Like, I don't want the state management to happen inside this component, because you remember I want components to be more dumb. So the parent of this is color input, right? So we can do exactly that. We can move this use state from here to the parent. So I'm going to cut this, go to color input and paste it inside this. Okay. Use state, I would say, need to import it. Not using it anymore, so I can delete it. But what about this value now? Like this value, this on change, what happens to that now? How do we take care of like typing in the input box, changing it as and when we want to type and stuff like that? How do we do that? Well, it's going to be simple. All we need to do is pass it as a prop. Okay. So a prop, what would be a prop? You can think of a prop as something uh, that the parent, in this case the color input, wants to pass to the child, a value that the parent wants to pass to the child. Okay, so in the case of hex color input, it needs to accept two props. One was this hex input, right? So I can do exactly that. I can say that this hex input is now going to be passed as a prop. And the second one was the set hex input. I can pass that as a prop. So now you can see that this has the red squiggly lines, but this is fine. Okay. It says that, oh, the parent is going to pass it to me. So whatever the parent passes, I will just show that. Whatever like on change happens, that goes on the top, right? So now in case of hex input, you can say that it, like in case of let's say RGB, it just said import RGB. But now in case of hex, it says that it needs two things. Okay, there's a hex input and a set hex input. So let's add that. So hex input, I will say that is going to be equal to this, and the set hex input is going to be equal to this. And to avoid any name confusions, actually, I am going to change this to hex, and I could change this to set hex input or set hex. Actually, I'm confused now. Okay, let it be. hex input, set hex input, and this hex input and this set hex input, we can change that actually. We can call it just hex and on hex change. Okay, so this gets passed here and this gets passed here. Perfect. So this red squiggly lines, we can fix it later in a bit. But for the timing, focus on the value hex that is being passed, which is basically this. So this variable has now changed. It's called hex, and this is called on hex change. Would pass this to the child below. So now if I go here, if I reload this whole thing, there's that, and I can actually still type inside it, right? That is cool. So this is how you can pass some data from parent to child. The child needs to just accept it. Now, fixing this issue, what do we need to do here? It says that it's missing in props validation, and as you can see it on hover, it says that it is coming from ESLint. Okay, ESLint is checking our code and it says that, hey, this value hex, what would be the type of it? Okay, what should be the type of it? Is it a number? Is it a string? Is it required? Is it not required? A bunch of some questions that you should answer. Now, you could do something like this. You can say that in my component, in my prop types, I have two props. The first prop is hex, which is prop types dot string dot is required. Okay, that's my first type. And the on hex change, the prop types dot, it's a function, so dot func dot is required. Okay, so I could do something like this. Now it says there's a error here. It says prop types is not defined. That's because we have to import it. So we can actually import it as import prop types from prop dash types. Okay, so it is coming from add types folder, prop types and stuff. uh, don't need to care about it. You can think of it, okay, comes in built and I'm using exactly that. Okay, dot string dot is required dot function, uh, and yeah, I think that should be it. Okay, cool. So now we have set some prop types and we have set the type of it. So now if I go here, if I hover over it, it says the hex is going to be a string and on hex change is going to be a function. Okay, now I wouldn't say modern day, but you also have the option of actually using TypeScript instead of plain JavaScript. For the for the ease of working, I am building this in JavaScript, at least for the time being. But you know, ideally, you would want to build it in TypeScript, because in TypeScript, you don't have to do it this way. Okay, you have to define your types and stuff, just not in this way. So just like pros and cons of stuff. Okay, moving on. So we have the hex input. We have added some like custom on change and stuff. So, okay, what's the next thing? We should add the RGB input, right? So let's go to RGB color input. Let's fix this first. So if I take the hex color input, there are a few things that I will copy from here. Let's say the width full. Okay, of course I want the width to be full. Going to remove the colors, so width full on the RGB color input. What about this H3? I'm going to copy that, and instead of the P tag I'm going to add this. Now instead of RGB it would be, sorry, instead of hex it would be called RGB, right? And then we need inputs, like three inputs. Why? Because R, G, and B, these are three different colors. Okay, so we need three inputs. So instead of having just one input, which was very simple in hex, we are going to go with three inputs. So let me wrap it in a div tag. So let's create a div tag. Okay, for the time being, very simple, very easy. Let's create an input here. So I'm going to say input, not like this, it's a HTML tag. So input, and what would be the type of this? This would be a type of number. Okay, okay, it's going to be a type of number. Now the min value and the max value of this. So the min is 0, you can see on this website, and the max is 255. So we can set that so someone cannot go above that. So I can go like min 0 and max would be like 250, 255, not 355, 255. And what else? We need to add the on change, we need to add the value, we need to add the placeholder. Let's do it one step at a time. So placeholder, I will say this is the color R. So once it's empty, let's say. And what about the value and stuff? So let me actually first close this. Okay. And it says provide an ARIA label. Okay. For accessibility purpose. Okay. So I can say aria dash label equals to R as well. Now I will repeat this. So I'm going to copy this thing and repeat it like 3 times. One time would be like for the G. So you could kind of multi-select here. You could do, oh, that's a bad idea. Let's say R like this. Multi-select it twice, and this should be G, and then multi-selected, and this should be B. Okay, so R, G, and B. So if we go to our website, now we have input boxes. We have not added any class names, so let's do that quickly. I'm going to copy the class name that we added to the hex color input. Okay, we want the inputs to look similar, right? So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to add this particular class name, then this class name here, and the class name, same class name, nice. And it goes one below the other. But as you can see, there's like input, right? Does not go below this. But if you delete it and you type like 6, that's good. If I type any alphabets, it does not take that. Okay. And any, I see there's a question. I am confused. Is this good enough? Good enough for, so you have given me like a local host link. Okay, there's a question. If my parent page were to have too many state inputs, is there a better way to manage it, or do I need to make state variables for all inputs? So there is a better slash there is a worse way of doing it. Ideally, let's say if it is simple enough, like for in our case, how many inputs will we have? We will have one for hex, one for RGB, which you could break it. Then there would be what? There will be one for HSL, Okay, so like a state to manage HSL, and that's it, right? That would be it. So overall, actually, only three input states. But if it is going to go beyond that, you could use a React hook called as use reducer. Okay, use reducer. This acts like similar to your use state. Okay, the only difference is it makes the code cleaner. So I have a state and there's a dispatch kind of written there. And inside this, we can have multiple actions. So to someone looking at your code, they'll be like, oh, there's not like your use reducer using this reducer function. This can have multiple state actions. Like in our case, it would be if action type equals to input hex, then we want to do something. If action type equals input RGB, then we could do something. So, and if action type equals uh, input HSL, then we could do something, right? So, to a user looking at it, to a developer looking at it, it would be one single line. You won't have like so many state managements. But in our case, we will have it because it's easy. Okay. Dispatch and understanding dispatch sometimes becomes cumbersome. So dispatch is like a JSON where each key is a state. Not really. I wouldn't say like a JSON. I wouldn't say each key is a state. Uh, yeah, not exactly like a JSON. Okay. The key naming and stuff, yeah, that is actually on you to add it. Uh, like in this case, okay, the reducer function is has two things: increment age, change name. So I'm going to change name to GHW here. So this is what's happening. Okay. And if I click on increment, that's it. And if I you are 45 and I change the name. Okay. So I wouldn't uh okay, now I guess I understand what you meant. Yeah, your each case is like your key in a JSON, and each object inside it is right like the value to a JSON. Okay, now I understand exactly. Oh, yeah, you could say that. And like let's say this handle button click. This is being passed to this on click. The on change is going for this function handle input change, which is calling this dispatch, where the type is basically your the key. Yeah. And the next name is the response that will be stored, which comes back from here. Okay, cool. Moving on to our project. So sorry, RGB and three input boxes, one below the other. I think I would prefer if they are one like next to each other. So let's add some CSS for that. How do we make the input boxes be next to each other? So we could use the next thing that exists, which is flex. Okay. So the parent needs to have a flex class name or class as flex. And I think that should be it actually. So let's say, so the parent to all these inputs is the div tag, right here. So I'm going to give it a class name of flex, and let's see, does it do the trick? Yes, it does. Everything is now next to each other, but they are very stuck to each other, right? So we could kind of add a space in between. uh, if I go to their documentation, of course it will take more time and I have to find it. Basis flex direction. uh, okay, I know what it is called. I think it's called space between. Yeah, so you can add some space between things, so like flex and space x4. So instead of let's say gap, you add like space. On the x-axis, I want like space x2, and that adds some spacing between the R, the G, and the B, right? And what else? Oh, the state management, right? We need to add that as well. Uh, so let's do that. So what did we do for hex? We did hex and on hex change. For RGB, we could do something like RGB and on RGB change. Okay. Now RGB is actually made of three values, right? So we need to break it out of that. Like, what do I mean exactly? Is when then someone would type this, they would enter the values or pass the values or to XYZ stuff. Uh, they enter one in R, one in G, one in B. You don't want to pass three different things. I want to only pass one variable, and that one variable should contain the data of three things. So let's do that. We could do const R comma G comma B, segregate it out, and that is equal to actually RGB. Okay, so this RGB variable that is coming from the top here, down here, is actually made of three different things. Okay, it's like broken into three different things. That's how you can think about it. Uh, and so I will say the value would be, in this case, R. The value for the second one would be G, and the value for the third one would be B. Okay, so that's how we have broken it, and that's how we are passing it. Now, what else? Uh, how do we know? The on change, yeah, the on RGB change. Now, this function, like when we did the hex color input, all we needed to do was do on hex change and pass it the e dot target dot value, which is coming from here, which is change event internal thing, let's say. So we could do that here. We could do like on change. There's a e, and that calls the on RGB change, and e dot target dot value, right? We could do something like this. The problem in this case is that on RGB change actually changes the whole variable of RGB, and this value is only for the variable R. So how do we tell it that, hey, you cannot change everything, you only need to change this variable R? Because in case of G, it can only, like, if someone types in this input box, which is kind of broken right now because these variables are missing. uh oh, it's not iterable. Okay, we need to fix that as well. Okay. uh but yeah, when someone tries to change, let's say, G, or type in the input box of G, it should not change the value of R or B. So we need to define the position of where this or which one is it changing. So we can do exactly that. We can say that on RGB change, it takes in two things. One is the position, and the second is the value. So let's do this. Let's copy this, go over to the second one, and now the position would be the first position. So array in zero based indexing, so 0, 1, and 2. Okay, so that's one step. Then it still giving the error of RGB is not iterable. It means that it does not know, like, from one value, how are you breaking it into three values. So we need to tell it that, oh, it's, you can map over it, you can loop over this, and when you loop over it, it comes like for each value, just return the value. Okay, and now next is cannot read properties of undefined reading map. It's like, wait, is it, you can map over it? How? Like, how are you passing it from your parent component, or how is this whole thing mappable? So actually, I could do one thing. I could duplicate it, break it, and I can give it some values just to show. So 244, 122, 55. Okay. So let's say something like this: 244, 122, 55. So if I change this, oh, it wouldn't change right now, uh, because we are not, the on change functionality does not go anywhere. But like, this is how the initial value will be passed from the parent, which is color input, to RGB, the child. And this is how it is broken. Now, there is one problem. If this is AB as a string, this goes empty. Okay. Also, if someone types something here as a string by mistake, we need to do some validation there, right? So what we could do is, we could kind of do some conversion around there, right? So we can say that this thing is going to be an integer. Okay. And at the same time, if it is, hmm, and at the same time, if it is not available, you should default to 0. So e dot target dot value is normally a string, and we are converting it to number, and we are saying if it is not available, it should be 0. So if I try AB right now, maybe it needs the on change. That should default to basically whatever is the 0. Okay. And we can add this validation everywhere. So I think I should have added the validation before copying everything, because now I have to do it again. So let me do that quickly, and the position here changes. Uh, right? Yep. And that's going here as well, on change, and the position here changes to 2. Okay, cool. So, oh, there's something in the chat. Check this out. Uh, oh, okay. Let me check it out. Okay, it takes to different pages. Nice, good one. Okay, so moving on. Sorry, what we were doing? We were trying to fix this, right? So let's actually first pass the value from parent, do some things in the parent, which will ensure that you can pass the correct value from parent to child. And we can do const RGB values, comma, set RGB values equals to use state of, what I want the initial state to be. I want the initial state to be an array of 3 colors. So it could be 240, 212, 122, 211. Okay, I know it goes maximum to 255, so this is good. Now RGB color input, it needs two things, right? What happened there? Sorry. It needs two things. It needs the RGB, right? So that would basically be RGB values, and it needs the on RGB change, which should be set RGB values, right? And going back, uh, prop validation. So let's do that quickly. We know we have to import the prop types. So import from prop dash types. What are we importing from here? We're importing prop type or prop types. Was what was that? Prop types from prop dash types. Okay, perfect. I'm going to copy paste that as well. And then we scroll to the bottom and let's add some validation here. Now our RGB, it is actually a type of array of numbers. Okay, so we can go like RGB color input, which is the file name, dot prop types. Oh, not prototype, prop types. Okay, and that is equal to RGB. It is number one, it is going to be of array. It is of type array, so it's array, but it's array of, it's, it can only take in numbers. So prop types dot number, and it is required, so is required. Similarly, the on RGB change, uh, what should be the type for that? It's going to be a simple function, so it's going to be prop types dot function dot is required, and that is it. So RGB, it's going to be of type array, and on an array you can map over it, and on RGB change is going to be a function which is required. So now if I go here, let me reload the page. Can I do something? Oops. RGB.map is not iterable, or its return value is not iterable. Okay, that is interesting. Let's print it out. So I can print out R, G, and B. Okay. Yeah, everything looks fine to me. Reload this. And can I? Okay, so it says invalid prop RGB of type number supplied to RGB color input, expected an array at RGB color input. What did I miss? Did I miss something? Hmm, I don't think so. I feel like this should be fine. Doing the positioning and stuff. Oh, we are doing the positioning, but our color input actually does not care about the positioning. Okay, it does not take care of that whole positioning system. It needs to understand that, hey, this is the position that this thing needs to go, and whenever someone types something, it needs to take that input and put it in a particular position, particular order. Right now it's not exactly understanding that, so we'll need to fix that. But before fixing that, actually I know a better way to do it. Okay, and I say better way because, well, very simply, we don't want three different colors to be input and stuff, right? We want like one single color to be passed as input to everything. So we can actually, um, actually we'll need to fix it in a way. Let's see, what can we do? Let's first start with handle change. So const handle RGB change. Okay, I'm adding a new thing here. Const handle RGB change. It takes in two things. It takes the index and the value. Okay, the index is the position where the thing needs to be changed, and the value is the actual value. Now I can say that const new RGB, okay, a new variable, is going to go over the initial or the default RGB values. Okay, So this is us fixing the error that we are getting. Next step is the new RGB on its particular index is where we want the value to go. Okay. Next would be now to call the set RGB values should be equal to new RGB. Okay. Now where does this handle RGB change go? So the handle RGB change actually can be passed to on RGB change. Okay, I think this should fix it. So what are we saying is that whenever that on change happens, it should call this handle RGB change function that we have written, because it returns two things. It returns the index and it returns the value of it. And we want to set the RGB values to this new index and value. Okay, let's try it. So now if I go 212, 213, 214, 215, yep, this works. So we had to fix it. Similarly, if I'm changing on this end, it works as well. When I'm changing here, it works as well. And if I'm deleting everything, it defaults to 0. If I am trying to clear it out, it defaults to 0. Okay. Yep. I'm trying to press backspace and it does not clear. If I select it, delete it, no. If I type in characters like alphabets, does not work. Perfect. So we have kind of created our RGB input as well. So we have created hex input, we have created RGB input, and we have to now create a HSL input. Now this should be very similar to our RGB, right? So yeah, let's do that. I am going to open RGB next to it so that I can copy paste a few things. Let's start with prop types this time. Okay, that's our prop types. Then this takes in two variables or two props, if you have to say it properly. The first prop, it should be your what, HSL, and then on HSL change, right? Two things. Perfect. In this case, again, we want const HSL equals to HSL, right? Three variables from one. We are breaking it. And what else? Uh, the div. Okay. So we can take this whole thing that we have written for RGB, copy this, delete it, delete the previous one and replace it. The values that needs to change. So this is on H and this would be on HSL change. This would be S and this would be on HSL change, and this would be L and this would be on HSL change, right? So if I shorten this, perfect. So HSL, and oh, the title that needs to change to HSL. The placeholder and the ARIA label that needs to change as well. So this would be H, this would be S, and then this would be L. Okay, HSL and this. Can't see it actually right now because, well, there's no variable, there's no value. So for the time being, let's create one. This would be over an array of 122, 199, 95, or 96. And there we go. So 122, 99, 96, right? So that's our HSL. Now HSL is, as I said, it's a hue, saturation, and lightness. And actually, I'm out of time. Just realized that. Whoops. Let me come back on screen. I am pretty sure we have sessions after this. So okay, yeah, sorry. I just realized that we are really out of time. We completed 2 hours. We nearly reached adding the HSL input boxes, but I'm pretty sure it is now understandable and easy. even for you to, like, even for everyone to actually add it on their own. Don't add it on your own though yet, uh, because I am going to create this pull request. I'm going to approve it. I'm going to make changes to this. Uh, so yeah, keep an eye on the GitHub repository. I'll create more issues for tomorrow. I will also add, some. What was the request to add contribution guidelines? I think PR templates. PR templates. Okay, I'll have to check how to exactly add it. Uh, so yeah, we'll do all those stuff, and meanwhile, register on DigitalOcean. Adds, contribute to other projects, but this project is again one thing that you could contribute to. So with all of that, thank you so much everyone. Any questions before we leave? The next session would be actually deploy your first site on app platform with Rosendo. I hope you're looking forward to that. uh, it starts at 20:30, so 8:30 p.m. ist or 3 p.m. gmt. Okay, so definitely visit Rosendo's stream, and you will learn how to deploy a static website from scratch on DigitalOcean's platform as a service offering. Okay, so definitely go for that. And meanwhile, thank you so much. Thanks. Oh, long time no see, Shamari. Thank you. Thank you. And see you in the next session tomorrow. Cheers. Bye bye.